Porsche's history entered a dynamic phase in the early 1950s when, just 3 years after the company's founding, it built a car that gave the brand its first victory in the world's most challenging endurance race. In 1951, the modest 356 SL dominated the 1.1-liter class at the 24 Heures du Mans, inspiring admiration with its reliability and speed on the long straights. 12 months later, a modernized version repeated the feat, and Porsche engineers began to think beyond simply adapting road-going models. This was the impetus for the creation of the 550 series, the brand's first fully-fledged racing car. Compared to the 356 SL, which was based on production Volkswagens, the future 550 represented a completely new approach. While it may be hard to believe today, it wasn't obvious at the time that a sports car should be built from scratch as a competitive vehicle. Porsche had to be frugal. It didn't have vast financial resources or time at its disposal. As a result, two teams were formed: a design team led by Wilhelm Hild and a team responsible for the drivetrain, headed by future Porsche legend Ernst Fuhrmann. The goal was to create a car for the 1.5-liter class that would be lightweight, durable, and fast. At the time, it was a design revolution. The Hilda team opted for a mid-engine layout, ahead of the rear axle, a solution that seems natural today, but at the time was practically unheard of in sports cars. For Porsche, it was the debut of a configuration that would later bring the brand its greatest successes in endurance racing history. From the 917 through the 936 and 956 to the 962 and the contemporary 911 GT1. The central engine layout provided ideal balance, improved cornering stability, and increased the development potential of the entire design. Equally impressive was the 550's supporting structure, combining a steel flat frame with an aluminum monocoque. This kept the car's weight to around 550 kilograms. The first iteration of the model was produced in just 2 examples and featured a removable coupe body. The use of an enclosed cockpit made practical sense. On the legendary Le Mans straights, lower aerodynamic drag was a significant advantage. The body design demonstrated that Porsche was beginning to consider aerodynamics as seriously as the mechanical engineering itself. At the time of its debut, the project was still technically unfinished. The final engine wasn't ready yet, so the car received a 1.5-liter unit from the road-going 356. The air-cooled engine, above all simple in design and rugged, underwent an extreme test: 72 hours of continuous operation at maximum load, with brakes only for refueling and driver changes. During this time, it covered 11,000 kilometers at an average speed of around 152 km/h. In the production 356, it developed 70 HP, while in the 550, power was increased to just under 80 HP. Although the performance wasn't impressive, the track debut demonstrated the potential of the entire project. In 1953, at the Nürburgring, one of the coupes started without a roof and took victory. At Le Mans that same year, Porsche entered 2 550 coupes. The results exceeded expectations: domination of the class, and an impressive 15th and 16th place overall. The cars proved that with appropriate aerodynamics, low weight, and durable mechanics, even modest power is enough to achieve marathon success. By the end of 1953, work on the new 1.5-liter engine was completed. Fuhrmann created an engine that went down in history as the Type 547. It was an air-cooled 4-cylinder boxer engine equipped with a DOHC valve train with 2 camshafts in each head. The most unusual feature was the timing drive. Instead of traditional chains or belts, a highly precise but expensive system of shafts and bevel gears was used. Ultimately, the 1.5-liter engine produced around 110 HP and around 120 newtons of torque. The new engine necessitated structural and aerodynamic changes, giving rise to the 550 RS Spider. Unlike the coupe, the RS was intended to be a more versatile concept, intended for both track use and road-legal customers. Body design was entrusted to Erwin Commenda, also responsible for the styling of the first production Porsche models. The open-top cabin accommodated two people, and the car was offered with a windshield with wipers and the option of an aerodynamic passenger seat cover for single-seater racing. The debut of the 550 RS was somewhat surprising. At the 1953 Hockenheim Grand Prix, the new Spider lost to its older cousin, an 80-horsepower coupe. Contrary to appearances, this was an important lesson for the designers, who realized that the new configuration required refinement. A month later, the 550 RS was unveiled at the Paris Motor Show, and small-scale production, also intended for private racing teams, was officially announced. Production began in 1954, and the first examples began to be delivered to motorsport enthusiasts. The 550 RS Spider's greatest racing success came very quickly. In 1954, two factory examples, with power boosted to 117 HP, competed in the famous Carrera Panamericana, an ultra-tough 3,000-kilometer race in Mexico. The Porsche's lightweight and agile design kept pace with competitors with almost twice its power, resulting in third and fourth place overall and a convincing class victory. From that moment on, the Carrera name became iconic, later adorning sporty versions of Porsche road cars. Despite this success, the RS Spider failed to dominate the world's racetracks, prompting Porsche to further modernize the design. However, the model inadvertently became a part of pop culture thanks to the tragic death of James Dean, who purchased a road-going example, dubbed the Little Bastard, in 1955. On September 30th of that same year, Dean died in a collision with a Ford while driving on a public road. Although the RS had already achieved its greatest successes, it was this tragedy that catapulted the car into a global icon. Porsche, however, concluded that the design possibilities were not yet exhausted. In 1956, the next evolution was presented. The 550A RS Spider, which visually resembled its predecessor, but beneath its aluminum skin was a completely different car. The biggest change concerned the supporting structure. The previously used flat frame was replaced by a tubular steel space frame, significantly stiffer and more resistant to overloads. The outer panels were still made of thin aluminum, ensuring the same weight while significantly increasing stiffness. Modifications also extended to the drivetrain. Although displacement remained at 1.5 liters, power increased to around 135 HP. This was achieved through the use of new Weber carburetors and an increased compression ratio to 9.8.1. The engine was paired with a new 5-speed manual gearbox and a ZF self-locking differential. The suspension was also improved. The rigid rear axle remained, but shorter and stiffer springs were used. This improved handling, especially in fast corners, where the earlier RS Spider could be a bit jumpy. The 550A RS Spider made its debut at the Mille Miglia in 1956. The new design won the displacement class, which was only a foretaste of its true potential. The 1,000-kilometer Nürburgring soon followed, where two 550As achieved an astonishing result: fourth and sixth place overall, as well as a class victory. The 1.5-liter car faced competition, powered by engines twice its size. The result alerted the industry to the fact that Porsche was now considering motorsport as a strategic foundation for its development. The biggest test came a few weeks later during the 24 Hours of Le Mans. Porsche decided to bolster its aerodynamics by equipping its cars with coupe bodies designed to reduce drag. Of the two cars entered, only one reached the finish line, but the result was spectacular: fifth place overall and first in the displacement class. Competitors were amazed that a car with such a small engine could maintain average speeds comparable to cars many times more powerful. The 550A's success was also a commercial success. Porsche offered the car to private teams, leading to examples appearing in various racing series from Europe to the United States. A total of around 40 550A RS Spiders were built, making it rare, but not unique like its predecessors. The design also tested engines enlarged to 7 liters, foreshadowing the development of future Porsche four-cylinder racing engines, which would later be incorporated into the 718 series models in the 1960s. 1956 was both the pinnacle of the 550A's racing career and the model's final season of full-time activity. By 1957, Porsche had developed its successor, the legendary 718, which adopted the 550's design philosophy, but evolved for the new era of motorsport. The 718 continued the tradition of mid-engines, lightweight aluminum bodies, and maximum aerodynamic efficiency. As a result, the 550A, though it didn't dominate for long, became a key link in Porsche's evolution from a sports car manufacturer to a global racing powerhouse. Today, all variants of the 550 series are coveted by collectors, museums, and auction houses. Examples with full race documentation command spectacular prices. For example, a 550A RS Spider, a Targa Florio winner, sold in 2004 for the equivalent of 2.62 million zloty. In the following years, prices only rose, reflecting the global craze for 1950s and 1960s racing cars. These cars are treated not as automotive exhibits, but as technological masterpieces, representing a transitional stage between eras. Analyzing the 550 series from a historical perspective, it's clear that Porsche took a risk at a crucial moment in the brand's development. Instead of continuing to adapt road-going models, it decided to build a pure racing car, something even larger companies weren't doing at the time. The result was a lightweight, efficient, and progressive design. The philosophy of small power to defeat larger opponents became the foundation of the brand. It was in 1950 that the engineering philosophy Porsche cultivates to this day was born. Efficiency over brute force. To conclude the story of the 550 Coupe, 550 RS Spider, and 550A RS Spider, it's safe to say that this was one of the most important series in the history of motorsport. It set design, aerodynamic, and technical benchmarks for decades to come. From the perspective of 1953, no one could have known that the unassuming Porsche, with its 1.5-liter engine, would become the ancestor of icons like the 917, 956, and 919 Hybrid, winners of Le Mans, World Championships, and hundreds of other trophies. It was the 550 that opened the door for Porsche to motorsport, for which the brand is beloved to this day.